Welcome to everyone. Everyone on this call today is either a VoiceMap publisher with a publicly published tour or a VoiceMap team member. So today on the call, we have Iain Manley, who is the founder and CEO of VoiceMap, as well as Tom Reff, who's our head of commercial, Gary Morris, who is our head of content, and Alicia Chamaye, who is our head of content distribution. I hope I said that correctly. How the session is going to work today, we've invited a publisher, Dan Sutherland-Weiser, to be our host today. He is going to go through the questions that you've submitted and in discussion with Iain, also share a little bit of feedback from the publisher's side. So before I hand over, I just wanted to introduce Dan and Iain to you. And Dan, I've used your publisher profile to give this introduction. So Dan is our publisher based in Baltimore. He published his first tour there. He currently has 4, 2 in Baltimore, 1 in Anna Maria in Florida, and 1 in Washington, D.C. His latest one in Washington, D.C. is about the assassination of President Garfield, one that I'm quite excited about. He's also been telling stories for years in a different way, working in comms for the US House of Representatives and giving walking tours in the US Capitol and running tours through DC. And according to his tagline, he is an Emmy Award-winning journalist with a knack for finding untold and forgotten stories. Iain, who is our founder here at VoiceMap, his profile mentions that he is a writer and connoisseur of the last minute. I'm not going to talk too much about him because I think most of you have met him before in our either our publisher info sessions or our webinars. So Dan, I'd like to hand over to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. It's great to see you. Iain, I'm sure I speak for all the publishers. Thank you so much for joining us and letting us ask you questions. It's just really great to be able to have the top of the company and your colleagues there along with us today. And I think we appreciate this time. Thank you. Names are very important. I'm terrible at pronouncing names, so if I mispronounce one of your names, feel free to correct me. It was just a few moments ago that I learned how to actually pronounce Helene's name. And I've always been calling her Helene, Helena, but now I know it is Helene. So at least I'll get Iain and Helene's names correct. But thank you very much. So we'll get right into it.
I'm interchangeably Lane or sometimes Iain, and people get very confused by it. So it's kind of and we've got Gary has something as an alternate name, I think Alicia. Alicia is always Alicia, so don't worry too much about it, Dan. We're used to it.
Well, and as I said, I've been called lots of things, not usually to my face, so you know. But I will do my best on the names. Again, correct me. So I'm going to pose the questions to Iain, and if you have a quick follow-up to your own question, feel free to ask it when Iain's finished. But in the hopes of getting through as many questions as possible, I'm going to do them and we'll hopefully get through quickly. So the first one is, and I hope I pronounced their name correctly, Uzra. I hope I did that all right. This was the top vote getter. What is the typical VoiceMap user? Gender, age, country of origin, any other specific characteristics noticed? Solo travels, couples, and families. Iain?
Yeah, this is a difficult question, right? Because we have data on who our most valuable and most active users are because we've surveyed them. And that's self-selecting in its own way because people who respond to surveys are not the same as all the people you send the survey to. The people who have bought multiple tours tend to have quite a few things that connect them. They're often quite well traveled, quite well educated. They skew a little older. 40% or so were over 55. They listen to podcasts or audiobooks, and they travel, like I said, they've traveled a lot and they travel quite frequently. And so you would almost expect to see that if you're surveying people who are doing a lot of tours. The broader question about, who is casually doing tours, who hasn't done a lot of tours, who's in the market for a VoiceMap tour is more difficult to answer, right? And unless we kind of required that everybody answer a question as part of getting access to a tour, we wouldn't be able to have a really clean answer to that. But we know that the under 25s are next to impossible to interest in this concept, because I think they're too young to have much of an interest in history. And then over 25, it actually starts to look into very sort of even slices in terms of age. And male, female, not a huge difference between one or the other. So I think that, the things that are easiest to identify are that education seems to work, and that sort of is almost self-evident. And then audio, right? So podcasts, audiobooks, if people are already consuming media in that way, they're much more open to the idea of doing an audio tour, and it feels natural and they can see the value.
Very good. Second question, also from Uzra. What are the benchmarks for sales, which ties in nicely with this? How many monthly sales are done for the best-selling tours? What is an average via VoiceMap, resellers, voucher codes, etc.?
Yeah, I'm always cagey about this, right? Because I don't think you can judge tours the same way, right? That tour of Barcelona is not the same as a tour of Cape Town, is not the same as a tour of Kyoto, and they have, that they're in different marketplaces, and they're either competing against a bunch of tours, or they're in a smaller market where there isn't that much awareness and where there aren't that many tourists. And so I'm always reluctant to try and peg any kind of data, any kind of number to success of a tour. I think the goal is always to try and get more sales as a whole across the entire platform. But saying that, I mean, I would say that, we pay royalties out to quite a wide group of publishers every month. So I'd say that, of the 800 or so publishers we have, about 1/3 get paid every month, right? And then there's a huge range of what people get paid in those bands, right? Where you have some people that I think are actually getting to a point where there's a meaningful revenue stream here, where they're earning enough from their tours that this is something that is potentially an occupation. There are obviously companies, and some of the companies are making even more than that, but they have larger concerns and operational expenses. But of the people who are just kind of publishing independently, maybe they're also a tour guide, or maybe they're also a journalist or a podcaster, or something of that nature that is kind of a one-person band. They are selling enough of their tours, in many cases the best performers, to I think, look at taking this on as a full-time job to some degree. And that's the bar that we try and set, right? Is, can we build this into a community that actually is able to really do this as a profession of some kind? And can we kind of create a pool that's big enough of that group of people that kind of helps carry the whole thing forward? Because obviously, just getting a tour out the door is only, as I think everybody on this call well knows, getting the tour out the door is just the start of the journey.
Very good. Thank you. Great answer. From Looney, are there examples of publishers who started on VoiceMap without an existing audience or profile and then went on to become successful? And if so, What are the attributes? What helped them to be successful?
I think it's the majority, right? It obviously depends what you mean by a profile. And I guess the question kind of is implicitly, if you don't have one, can you succeed, right? And the answer is definitely yes, right? And I look at numerous people on this call. It seems like we've got a really kind of great group here, just looking at the names of people who have, in many cases, been working with us for years and who I've spoken to individually a number of times. And I know from many of them that they didn't have a profile. And you said, no, that they're not Stephen Fry, but they've built, quite a successful inventory of tours and distribution channels that help people find those tours. So absolutely. I mean, I'm going to pick on Sarah Salter. Sarah, I can see you. You're one of the little thumbnails, but would you say that you have a profile and brought a profile to VoiceMap as part of publishing your tours?
Yeah, when I started to make tours, my kind of feeling was it was early on in the journey, and COVID, which was hugely helpful because I had a lot of time on my hands. But when I learned how to do it, and I was very lucky, I had some training from yourself, I just fell in love with it straight away. But to begin with, it was a hard sell because at that time, people weren't massively comfortable with spending money in apps. So I built a couple of general interest tours that went to specific routes that I knew people wanted to do in my city. And they trickled out. When I spent a lot of money on advertising, they trickled out. But I wasn't disheartened because I knew I was early on in this tech journey, and I believed in it. So then I changed my track and I thought, okay, where is there a gap in the market for tours in my city, and who is going to like tech and likely want to jump onto this technology? So that's when I started doing Doctor Who tours, because it was a younger demographic who were more comfortable already with the tech. And also there was a desperate need for those particular fans to go around and find locations. It was at that point that I started a couple of things that I changed my tack on. One was I started to have my own hand-drawn front image, which I'm trying to carry on then through future tours, so that when you're looking down tours in the area, the ones that are mine, you can obviously see from the picture because there's a house style. So if somebody has done one and they're looking at tours in that area, they're going to know straight away which other tours are mine. So if they've chosen to do another one, they must have enjoyed the first one, right? So if they enjoyed the first one, maybe then they're going to want to do another one with me. And then sorry, I'm talking a lot. The other thing that I changed was, instead of producing expensive leaflets, I just concentrated initially on only Doctor Who tours and produced little business cards, which are really cheap to do comparatively, and you can sneak them places. And that's basically how I started. But I have now got a large number of tours. I'm working on another one with ideas for future tours still coming up. And I don't know that I hope to make this a full-time job, but I have a goal year on year. I have a graph of my income stream year on year, so I can see how I'm performing against the same time the previous year. And it would be nice to think that it was a significant part of my income in the future. And that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, thank you. That's super helpful. And I was looking at you because I think your Doctor Who tour of Cardiff is now one of the top selling tours in the UK. And, you're competing there against a lot of general interest tours of London, right? So it's a nice example because it's niche in a smaller market, and yet has outperformed a number of other tours, right? Or the majority of our other tours in the UK. So I think it's a great example of, not requiring a pre-existing audience, but finding the right topic and finding ways to get it in front of people. And I mean, people are obviously passionate about Doctor Who in a way that I don't quite understand.
Okay.
Is that a satisfactory answer?
Yep, that was great. And Sarah, thank you. That was excellent additional information. Iain, thanks for having her come in on this. From Mark, as AI tools become more capable, what is VoiceMap's strategy for ensuring the platform remains a home for authentic, human-centric storytelling? And of course, earlier this year, we had a seminar about AI. So Iain, if you can kind of wrap that in.
So I think that, we've just done this rebrand, and it was overdue, something we've wanted to do for a number of years now, but the moment that precipitated it was this kind of AI moment, right? Where it's all that the media talks about. Apparently, it's certainly, what you see when you go onto social networks. LinkedIn is just, a sea of people talking about how amazing AI is. And there was a really interesting chart in the Financial Times a little while ago. I should share it with you, Helene, and so that you can get it in front of the publishers. But it basically had the number of apps being submitted to the App Store going along the x-axis and over time, and then your y-axis was the number. And you just saw this big spike in the number of apps being submitted to the App Store. So a whole bunch of new vibe-coded apps, and then the adoption of those apps. And the adoption of those apps, actually, adoption of apps fell over the same time, not markedly so, but it was actually a dip at the same time as the number of apps exploded. And the revenue from apps kind of stayed flat throughout this big explosion. So the number of the AI content, AI audio tours, we see them popping up, and I think we are very conscious of separating what we do from what that experience offers. Right, the idea of being curiously human, self-guided tours is obviously a bit of a play on the idea that the experience of doing a tour is curiously like having that person stand next to you, but also just sort of emphasizing that this is a fundamentally human experience. It's a real voice, and you're engaging with the stories that are told by a real person, kind of filtered through real experience. And AI offers none of those things, right? And so we just need to make sure that we put our publishers front and center of how we position the tours, and make sure that it's as easy as possible. I don't know if you've seen the redesign or noticed the redesign of the iOS app that went out at the same time as the Curiously Human rebrand, but that now has preview buttons for audio everywhere, right? And so while you're browsing tours, we're encouraging people to listen to snippets of the audio. And again, when they listen, they hear in most cases, there are exceptions, they hear a real human voice. So we're doing as much as we can to make sure that we stay differentiated from AI-created content, while also realizing that and then recognizing that there are opportunities to do translations in a way that was never possible before, to do character voices. I mean, if you joined Tom Derbisher's workshop on how to create a great tour and kind of listen through to his audio section, he talked about using some of the AI voices to have character voices that previously, and I know Tom did this by, bribing his neighbors with alcohol, but you could now kind of create character voices to just to create a richer experience on your tours. And that was something that, unless you're very good at persuading your neighbors, was maybe something that happened in a studio previously. So there are opportunities to use AI to make tours better. The research process certainly is easier now. And I think for people who are not native speakers of English, AI voice is also, there's a line somewhere that is hard to define, where a person is not that intelligible speaking English. And so they potentially should use an AI voice, versus they have an accent, but it's actually part of the charm. And I'm not sure where that line is exactly. And but so we are open to the applications of AI, but certainly into the marketing of the platform and the product, we try and differentiate as much as possible.
Very good. Thank you. And our next question is from Paul Coyne in the UK. And Paul and I met during one of these seminars, and he provided a voice or voices for me that I needed with the correct accent for one of my tours. So I would also encourage people to reach out to other creators if need be, if you need an accent or a different voice. From Paul, are there any plans to advertise the VoiceMap platform more widely? Not individual tours, but the VoiceMap app. Once people find VoiceMap, they're hooked.
I mean, this is the first thing I think about in the morning, and the last thing I think about when I go to bed, right? Is how do we get VoiceMap out in front of a wider audience? We did, short of doing a Super Bowl ad, I think we're doing as much as we can, right? We don't have an infinite budget to just spend on building the brand and raising awareness. We have to do this in a way that is sustainable. But we are constantly running experiments. I mean, we do, 2 videos a week through Instagram. That also goes out. Alicia can talk in more detail about this. But, we're very active on social media. We are constantly optimizing for discovery through traditional search, Google search, as well as AI optimization for all of the new AI search that is slowly replacing Google or traditional Google. And I mean, we had black cabs branded with the Stephen Fry and History Hit Tours, driving around London for a month, and are really sort of, the supply side of this is something that has developed really well. I think that we're still kind of in the foothills of what's possible in terms of the demand side and developing the market for these tours. But it's a difficult problem. It's a difficult problem because, we're selling a product that is, $10 to $20, sometimes less than that. And we're sharing the revenue with our publishers, which, is not a problem, except that it curtails our ability to spend a lot of money on advertising to get each transaction, right? And then you're talking about a transactional frequency that's quite low, right? Even if a person loves VoiceMap, this is not a product that they're going to use every day. It's not Netflix, it's not Audible, it's not your subscription to ChatGPT or what have you. And so advertising it in a way that, delivers a return, that delivers a return on that ad spend is a thorny problem, but I promise you we're working on it. It's, like I say, a bit of an obsession of mine.
Very good. From Fabio, what is VoiceMap's market position compared to competitors, and which non-English languages are expected to be profitable in the future?
Sorry, I was distracted by Annette and Heidi's questions there that popped up on my screen. I caught the second half of that. What was the first half, Dan?
What is VoiceMap's market position compared to competitors, and which non-English languages are expected to be profitable?
Okay. So the competitors question first, I think that we are the only platform doing this at scale as a platform. I mean, so, like as a consumer side platform where we're actually selling tours and working with partner publishers to offer those tours, there's nothing really that is equivalent. We do have competitors that are much more B2B focused, right? They work with attractions, with OTAs, with large operators, and there they will, in many cases, develop the content themselves. They have mobile apps, native iOS and Android apps that are not great because the operators, the OTAs, that's online travel agencies, and the attractions largely don't want the friction of an app install, getting in front of somebody who is, in their view, their customer. And so they'll often just deliver the tour through a web frame, right? And then they charge, 20 cents, 30 cents per copy for these tours to the attraction, to the OTA, and it's a completely different business model. But some of them are doing it at a meaningful scale, and we meet with them at industry events and discuss the development of the industry with them. And I can think of a couple that are doing quite nicely, but there's no sort of close equivalent of the way we do this that I can think of. The other maybe example of interesting competitors also creating their own content are a company called Guide Along and a company called Shaka Guide, both US-based, doing driving tours through national parks primarily, and scenic road tours, driving tours. And this is a pretty transparent thing in terms of competition, because you can go and look at App Store rankings to see how much any one app, you don't see the actual number, how much money they made, but you can see how they performed relative to other apps, and just go and look for ranking by in-app purchase volume. And that's for the App Store and for Google Play, and break that down by the US or the UK or wherever you like, and see how different apps perform. And Guide Along and Shaka Guide do nicely. They're consistently sort of in the top 20 or 30 travel apps in the US. They do nothing in the UK. We are also there, I think, often in the top 20 in the US, and in the UK, sometimes in the top 10 travel apps by purchase volume.
Very good, thank you. From Stefan.
Other languages, right?
Yes.
So we sell quite a few tours in German, but it's nowhere near, like, even vaguely close to how many tours we sell in English. But it's an interesting thing, and it's something I think about because we're pretty exposed to the US market, and when Americans decide they're not going to travel as much as they have been, we feel that. So Ozra's doing there's a tear rolling across the screen. I'm not sure if that's because the Americans aren't traveling or because we're not doing more languages. But look, we did an experiment to translate a number of tours towards the end of last year using AI, and we looked at how those performed, and they did okay, but it's pretty clear that without also putting the distribution and marketing that we offer for all of the English language tours behind those languages, it's going to always just be it's going to trickle along, or it's not going to create the kind of explosive growth that I think is still a long way out. The sort of potential is still a long way out just for the English-speaking market. And as we grow and as we get more resources, we can then start to look at having members of the team who are focused on other markets, other languages.
Very good. Thank you. From the chat, real quickly, Paul Coyne had a follow-up question about advertising, and he said, have you thought of advertising on podcasts such as Audible?
So we have a number of podcast ads running through our partners at the moment. So History Hits is a major podcast network, and part of the deal there is that there's a bit of exchange in terms of them advertising their tours on VoiceMap through their podcasts. The same applies to QI's tours, which are narrated by Stephen Fry. They also have a few podcasts that they can advertise through. We've advertised through podcasts, using our just sort of independently of partners last year. The results, what we've seen works best is app install ads to kind of drive volume, scalable volume. App install ads going through social media is what has worked best and is certainly much easier to attribute to kind of understand what's happening there and what you're getting for your money. Podcast advertising is not cheap, considering that it's largely passive. People are kind of listening to it in the background. We've tried it. We'll try it more, but so far the results have been mixed.
Thank you. Moving along to Stefan, talking about the most wanted cities. What data is being used to put the most wanted list together? And when building a tour, what is it that people want out of those destinations?
At last, a question I can hand over. Tom, do you want to jump in and answer this, because you're kind of the person who's most closely involved in drawing up that list along with Helene?
Yes, certainly. So we use a couple of data sources. One is app open data, and the other is in-app searches. So app open data, we can see where people are opening the app, where they give us location permissions. We can view that on a big map, and then we compare that data to where we have tours and where we don't have tours. So that's one data source. The second data source is simply by looking at which destinations people are searching for within the app. You're familiar with the search functionality, and that's how people discover tours in a particular destination. We simply look at how many people are searching in each location. Again, and then we take both those data sources, we compare it against where we have inventory, where we don't have inventory, and that outputs the most wanted list. It also, we use the same data sources for the royalty promotion. So you may be familiar that once or twice a year, where we see particular demand for a destination, then we will actually offer an incentive with an increased royalty for you to create a tour in that destination. But on a more regular basis, we will be updating the most wanted list. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Very good. Since we still have a lot of questions to go, why don't we try and do somewhat of a lightning round? And Iain will maybe keep the answers to like a minute or so, and then we can get through more. And if people have questions, we can, pick that up at the end again. From Kit, as more places get a VoiceMap tour, is there a risk of duplication, or does the existence of a tour discourage other publishers? Lightning round.
So where we see that happening, we will alert the publisher to it and kind of encourage them to look at doing something different or doing the same route or theme differently. And I think even when routes are quite similar, if people are, weirdly human and have their own take and bring themselves into it, you do get a very different view of the place, even when there is overlap.
Excellent. Uzra, again, who posted some very popular questions. Can VoiceMap help to get TripAdvisor reviews from users? Can Iain's message at the end of a tour ask for reviews on the purchasing platform, follow-up emails, etc.?
So for quite a while, we used to email everybody who used Viator to purchase the tour asking for a review. And we didn't really notice that it was working very well. The best time to ask for a review is when people have just finished the tour, linking straight out to TripAdvisor or to Viator. We don't actually know because Viator will white label and then sell through Booking.com and Expedia and we actually are never totally sure where this person purchased the tour. Viator just says partner. So, you know, I think largely we want to sell more tours direct and not lean too heavily on the growth of OTA like TripAdvisor as a channel. And so we prefer to get those reviews happening on platform to validate VoiceMap and the experience of doing a particular tour.
Thank you. From Sebastian, is it possible to automatically resell my audio tours to a local reseller using a single code voucher and give this to the give this reseller a commission?
Alicia, do you want to jump in here?
Sure. So you can use voucher codes, but to give one to a reseller and then track commission, you'd need to do the checking yourself to see if that code's been used. So if you give a reseller a single code with multiple downloads, that is something that you would need to manage. We don't have it built into the system where, as a partner, it automatically gives them some commission, unless they have signed up for our affiliate program, but then they'd have access to our full inventory, not just a specific subset of tours. So that the affiliate program is one of the easier ways where we then manage the commission. We pay it out to the affiliate on successful sales. But if you are wanting to do something similar yourself, you'd have to manage it completely on your own using the voucher code system and then tracking the sales and all the downloads of that voucher yourself and with that partner.
Very good. Iain, anything to add to that? Or should I go on?
Yeah, I'm not totally sure I understand exactly how this would work. Obviously, the affiliate scheme is the kind of the simplest way of having somebody sell copies of your tours and get a commission from doing so. You don't necessarily need to use a voucher code. It is possible to sell in bulk, right? So if you've got an OTA that wants to sell copies of your tours, maybe get them to buy a bunch of copies up front rather than trying to track back how many have been used. And you know, I'm not sure exactly what the use case is there, so it's hard to answer too specifically. But there are lots of ways of trying to figure this out. And Alicia is the person to talk to about it.
Very good. From another creator who I've gotten to know through these seminars, from Amy McMahon, I'd like to learn more about how VoiceMap can support me in my learning of marketing, and if there are any other creators who are interested in learning together. Yes, I am. Go ahead.
I don't know exactly what that means. I mean, I think that marketing is a very broad subject, right? And we do try to provide as much support as we can realistically in you know, offering expertise and resources in the marketing of tours. We are going to be launching something called the Takeoff program. We're working on this at the moment. And this is based on the idea that in the first 100 days after you publish your tour, the initial sales that you generate, not from family and friends, but from real strangers, will really help to get that tour's momentum going. And that is going to be organized into specific kind of marketing activities. with detailed documentation, and it's likely that much of the informal webinars that we've been holding for small groups of publishers will be given some structure by this takeoff program.
Thank you both. Leslie, thank you for that really solid question. We appreciate it. We always want to be aware of how consumer tastes change from types of tours to tour length. What changes have you seen and what do you expect?
I'm not sure I've seen a huge amount of change. I do think that shorter tours, and by shorter I mean sort of under an hour and a half, is you don't want to go much over that. An hour is good, and I think it's interesting to see the performance of themed tours. Sarah's Doctor Who tour is a nice example. For a while, and I think when we were more reliant on OTAs as a channel to drive sales, it was the general interest kind of best of a specific destination that sold the most copies, but that's starting to evolve. And we are definitely interested in doing more indoor tours. We've seen some really encouraging growth, mostly in Europe around sort of museums and major attractions, and are investing in kind of trying to do more of that and market those tours more. It's a different sort of market, but yeah, I think there's plenty of untapped opportunity in indoor tours, driving tours too, right? But driving tours, especially in the US, are a tiny fraction of our overall offering, but are a big part of how people travel and how people want to consume this kind of content. So, and they have their own dynamics, right? A walking tour, 90 minutes, a driving tour is going to be longer. And then a tour indoors at a museum or a gallery is a bit more of a pick and mix, right? You're looking at potentially not trying to curate the experience in exactly the same way, and maybe have different versions of the same content, with kind of different slices of it. I know we did recently a tour at the National Gallery that was offered by a YouTuber, and that is available as a kind of a very brief introductory tour, and then a much more sort of comprehensive, longer version of the same tour.
Good. Okay, we don't have a whole lot of time left. Elaine, I know that you may want to open the floor to other questions, but I'll go through a couple more before we do that, if that's okay.
Actually, Dan,
Yes.
I just wanted to note that if anyone does want to stay a little bit longer, we can stay. Or Iain and I at least will stay for longer.
I can stay.
Sure, we're available. I guess, but are there some things that, do we want to open things up a little bit? I mean, I don't know how many of the questions we've gotten through, or if there's stuff that's been upvoted quite a lot through the conversation that you want to surface.
Some are a little bit duplicative of other questions, but let's go to Helene's question. What should I focus on when I'm explaining VoiceMap and the idea of audio tours to my followers, clients, and colleagues?
The tech and the way that it works with GPS playback and working offline is nice, but for me, the thing that has always made people's eyes light up is hearing the voice and hearing the quality of the audio. That doesn't help you if you're kind of talking to a person, but it can help to just take out the app and show them what it looks like. And the trailer that is available on the homepage, which has the voices of a significant number of publishers all around the world, I think that's a fantastic kind of testament to the experience of using the product. I think voice does, the audio makes a big difference. Talking about, being able to explore at your own pace, to do tours whenever you like, to do them without having to join a group, to stop and have a drink. I think you must have seen us talk about this a lot. But it is, central to the product, the idea that a tour is always available on demand whenever you like. And, I think in many cases, people also enjoy the fact that they don't feel like a tourist when they do a tour. They are able to slip in some earbuds and blend into the crowd, and instead of kind of being a glaringly obvious tourist wandering about.
Very good. From Paul Coyne, with the success of celebrity tours and rebranding, what are you planning next? What's the next big thing for VoiceMap?
I mean, we just did the rebrand. Give us a chance. Look, when I was in Budapest recently, and I went to the Buda district, or the Buda Castle district. And for me, the most noticeable thing is how many people are just unguided, right? It's not that they're in a group doing a tour. It's that they have no guidance whatsoever beyond maybe Googling or Wikipediaing or, using AI to get some quick answers about something that catches their interest. And the goal is always to reach as many of those people as we possibly can. And I think one of the projects that we're looking at doing next is a public API. At the moment, the apps are powered by a private API and have always been powered by a private API. We've always been able to, it's not going to take us very long to build on top of that, to have a public API that would allow more people to integrate with VoiceMap and sell and make the inventory kind of visible through their channels. But how well that's going to work because of the limitations of the way OTAs kind of want to engage with their markets is still remains to be seen. But certainly something that we think has potential. And I think we will look at trying to replicate some of the success of London in other markets. I mean, there's so much more we can do in the US, particularly with both domestic and foreign visitors, that I think we're going to see if we can take some of the examples from things like the Stephen Fry tours to maybe do some US-based celebrity tours.
Okay, great, thank you. Again, from Leslie, would love a branded VoiceMap ad template in which I can insert my VoiceMap tour and my own pictures, then roll it out across all my social media platforms.
Alicia is working on that right now.
Excellent. That was a good, quick answer too, so we can get to another one. I think there are a lot of questions about how templates and all can help us in our marketing. Appreciate that. Elina.
It's going to be built into the distribution dashboard and will auto-populate from the content of your tour. It's not far off.
Good. Okay. Thank you. Alicia, what is the VoiceMap's criteria for accepting Instagram collaboration requests from publishers?
Alicia, are you going to answer?
Sure, I can.
Asked and answered. Sorry, when you said Alicia, I was like, oh, you must be asking Alicia, because obviously.
No, sorry.
I can answer my own question. We don't have a set criteria. We do look at the content and try and make sure that it will, if it appears on our feed, that we have a good thematic feed that looks aesthetically pleasing. We want to make sure that it's still on brand. So there are some things that can help improve your chances, but we can't accept everyone.
I think the thing is to emphasize is to talk to us before just adding us as a collaborator, right? That we are working on videos all the time. We're very happy if you provide us with footage, with, we have the audio from your tours, but perhaps we record something from scratch. We're very happy to work together on a concept and to do much of the video editing ourselves, but we're not able to capture the footage because we're not, there. and then we have a calendar, and we'll look at where we can slot it in that calendar. So the thing is more about looping us into the planning stage and working with us on something that we feel kind of is aligned with the other stuff that we're sharing. Yeah. Because what happens is exactly what you're describing, Alicia, that people add us as a collaborator, and it's the first time we've ever seen this post, and it's a little bit without context and would, confuse our existing audience.
Very good. Back to AI. What are your plans in regards to AI adoption from VoiceMap? Will you use any of its useful features in audio tours, user interaction, which, when, thanks? I know we've talked about voices, so we can go through this one fairly quickly.
Pushing me for quick answers here, Dan.
Yeah.
Look, we use it all the time. It's central to how we work these days. Obviously, it's a tricky thing to now build AI. I mean, if you get to the end of a tour and you want more Dan, to have the AI version of Dan kind of continue the tour is a bit suspect to me. I mean, it's possible. We could clone your voice and, train something on the style of your scripts and kind of let the tour continue, or have questions that some pseudo version of you would answer. I don't think it's the best use of our time right now in terms of how we develop the product, and so we look at it, we consider it, but I don't think it's kind of adding AI layers on top of the user experience is something we would do very cautiously.
Very good. And no, I'm not trying to cut down on the quality of the answers, obviously, but also trying to balance how many we're able to get in. What do I need to know from Kit? What do I need to know about stacked locations? And maybe that can be explained. And compass bearing.
Is Gary still here?
I'm here, yeah. I can jump in on this. I won't get too in the weeds on what each one is. Suffice to say, compass bearing, we have a documentation on that. Essentially, we use that for driving tours, where if a listener is driving in one direction, we can set it so a location will trigger in that direction, but won't trigger going in the opposite direction, which is useful for driving tours where you can do long detours and you have locations playing both on the way in and way out of a detour. We do break that down in the tutorial section. It's generally something the editors will be responsible for doing. It's part of what you get when you're working with an editor, is they know when to look out for these kinds of scenarios. Stacked locations is essentially a hack we use to deal with U-turns in walking tours, to make sure that essentially the app is looking for the next 3 locations sequence, and so we sequence a tour or a specific set of locations to avoid a location playing on the way in that should only play on the way out. That's something the editors are trained to look for and to know when to do. We could put documentation up for publishers. It's not something we're trying to hinder publishers from using. It is just generally something that requires some experience to know when to deploy. With newer location types like manual locations, we don't always need to rely on stacked locations. So it's kind of the editor's discretion to decide when it's appropriate to implement that and when not. But more than happy to provide more info on either of those if you require, Kit. Hopefully that answers the question.
Very good.
Thank you, Gary. Dan, just before you continue, I just want to note that we're at the end of our scheduled time. So for those of you who are only joining us for the hour, thank you so much for joining. For the rest, we will continue to answer a few more questions. If you are worried that you've missed out on anything, the recording will be available on our YouTube channel, as well as our blog, and we'll also include the questions that we weren't able to get to. So if you're dropping off in the next couple of minutes, thank you so much for joining. I will also send you invites to our next webinars quite soon. And back to you, Dan.
Thank you for that quick commercial break. Irene, can VoiceMap do more to promote new tours? The newly created tours need more visibility, announcements, spotlights. It's just and just added section. So possibly this is referring also to the VoiceMap website portal, not so much external advertising, which I know we've talked about some.
So yes, and Tom has been an advocate for this and has been pestering me for us to do a better job on this for a while. And so I think that some of his ideas are now filtering through. That's Tom Raff, not one of the publishers, our head of commercial. So you will see, depending on the destination or the country, that we often have a shelf specifically for new tours. That's on the website only at the moment, but most of the work for having these shelf views, including a specific shelf for new tours, is done in the apps and will be released. But because it's such a load-bearing part of the app, we will be A/B testing it, and so it's going to take a little while to roll out. And then we've actually just updated the algorithm so we are now kind of giving new tours that haven't had a chance to get as many ratings a bit of a bump, and that's in sort of destination rankings. So it still skews quite heavily in favor of tours that have a lot of ratings. We're going to be adjusting it gradually over time and trying to give new publishers with new tours a better chance, because in some places where the publishers or a specific tour is heavily entrenched, they keep getting more downloads because they're at the top of the list. It's not necessarily because they have the best tours. And we recognize that and are actively working on we want people to have the best possible experience with their first tour. And if that, means rejigging the way that we sort tours, then of course we'll do it. So yeah, it's ongoing.
Very good. As one of the older creators, I identify with Steve's question. Is my portfolio of VoiceMap tours transferable in the respect that I could will them to my grandchildren and they would receive royalties after my death?
Yeah, I see that being no different to the royalties on a book or on any other sort of piece of IP, right? I am not a lawyer and have never looked into this, but in principle, I don't see any issue with it, right?
Excellent. From Mark, which performs best, one-story tours like The Great Fire of London, or a more eclectic walk through a place, indoor versus outdoor?
I mean, it's such a difficult question to answer, because there are instances of both types of tours doing well and both types of tours doing poorly. I'd say that, the general interest walking tour historically has been a lot of what we offer. And so it's very easy to just say, oh, well, those are the tours that do best. I like the example of Sarah's Doctor Who tour, which I keep, referring back to as something that is a little bit different, but has done well. And there are numerous examples of tours that look a little different, that do well. I think for me, one of the questions you have to ask yourself in a theme tour is this something that really needs to be done on site, right? Or could this be a podcast, right? And because sometimes, unless the location of the tour really speaks to the material, you're going to end up kind of speaking in the abstract, and people are like, well, you're telling me to go left over here and to carry on straight, but none of the material I'm hearing or consuming has any real sort of connection to all of this walking. And then also, it is still a tour, and people are still going to have things in front of them that pique their curiosity. And so if you want to go off topic, or sometimes you actually need to go off topic just to kind of let people say, oh, that's what that thing is. Okay, let's get back to the subject of the tour. So I think it's easier to get a general interest tour right. I think when you want to do theme tours, fictional tours, the standard of production, the quality of the storytelling, the use of additional voices, all of that, you need to kind of raise the bar a little to really pull it off. It's a more ambitious challenge, and it requires a little more kind of finesse to get it right.
Very good. Good answer. Thank you. Heidi, with overlapping destinations, how can publishers think about collaboration versus competition? Are there ways that we can find to support this somehow?
It's Helene's looking at me meaningfully. Do you want to take this one?
Yes, I'm happy to. I specifically voted for that question. So one thing that we always say is that, and I always say this incorrectly, I'm going to do this right this time, the rising tide lifts all boats, right? And Iain mentioned this earlier as well. If you have 3 tours in a destination and they have different angles, different routes, maybe telling a different story, coming from a different voice, it creates more, not as much competition, but more tours that are available in that area. Collaboration is one thing that Dan mentioned, where you had Paul Coyne and Amy McMahon, collaborate with you on one of your tours, where they provide the voices for those tours. Other collaborations we've had is where publishers have provided the translations for their tours. So one person would provide the French translation for somebody's English speaking tour. I think another one that's quite good at the moment is, I know Heidi had this, she has a tour in Marrakesh and she was looking for somebody to test the tour. And we actually met somebody at a conference who's interested in creating a tour. We in the end, ended up testing that tour for her. So other than actually working on the tours, creating the tours themselves, there are other opportunities in testing as well as, leaving reviews. I think that's one of the big things we always say. If you're traveling, you're going to a different place, to try and listen to other publishers' tours. I think that's one thing that our community doesn't do enough of. You're so caught up on your own tours and the tours that you're creating yourself that you forget that listening to other tours also, you can learn a lot from that, but then also in the same time you can actually leave reviews for those tours. We have the Facebook group, the LinkedIn group, as well as a dedicated forum group for that, for those collaborations. The ones that I've mentioned are ones that I know of, but if there are other ideas, you're more than welcome to post. And Heidi, I know you are great at posting on the Facebook group, if you're still here, to post on the Facebook group, to ask. I know you asked recently about getting a marketing accountability partner. If that's the kind of thing that you want, post in the group, and ask so we can see if other publishers are interested. And the more interest there is, the more we can also sort of formalize these things.
I love this. I'll join the marketing accountability group.
I'll add one more way of collaborating, Helene, which I've thought a lot about. Baltimore, of course, close to Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, not far from New York, and there's certain stories that span all of these cities. And it would be kind of neat to do a series that maybe starts in Baltimore. Amy, you're shaking your head because I know you do a lot in DC also about, we could collaborate on a story that maybe starts in DC and ends in Baltimore or vice versa. Something like that would be really kind of cool. All right, next question from
No, it's
Steven.
such an interesting idea. I think that the most basic way of helping another publisher is actually to sell your own tour, because then they're on VoiceMap, and if they're traveling across a region, they're then immediately aware of the fact that, if they're starting in Barcelona, they can also do tours in Valencia or Madrid or, what have you. But there's a lot there, right? And being able to kind of, so with the introduction of passes, I think that the tour bundles are now going to be sunsetted at some point, but not entirely. And what we might look to do with bundles is instead have them as a sort of editorial piece, where instead of selling a bundle of tours, it's possible to maybe create a kind of suggested itinerary, whether that be for a specific day in a place, or instead a week-long trip along the east coast of the US, in the case of the example you're talking about, Dan. So yeah, there's it's a really sort of promising idea. I think there's a lot to talk about there.
Excellent. Thank you. From Stephen, is there frequently asked questions to help promote tour via leaflets? I would like guidance about decisions needed, about sizes and quality of paper, etc.
I can answer that one.
Okay.
I just posted the link in the chat, and I'll share this as well. For the print media that we do create, we do have the poster and the tour leaflets that we can provide to publishers, but these aren't always exactly what it is that a publisher is looking for. So a great place to go is the Facebook group. Recently we had, I think it was Paula, who asked about using a card. Yes. So who actually asked for an example of like a small card that she can use, and then Sarah Salter actually shared her copy for the card that she created. So we do have the standard that we can provide, but then if you have any other questions, we have 780 publishers who you can actually contact as well.
And the changes coming through on the dashboard, which will allow kind of the algorithmic, like we'll be using an API to create a bunch more print-ready posters, flyers, cards. We're looking at how we can make that process much more straightforward. I don't think wait on that if you want to print something soon. Talk to Helene, use the templates, but there is a lot more coming soon in that area.
Excellent. And that goes, a lot of this, of course, we could have a lot of questions about marketing, and this one obviously was from me, about pre-written or customizable articles or something for video or TV that we can submit to local newspapers to promote VoiceMap.
I mean, if you, it depends what you want there, Dan. We tried to get a bunch of press for the launch of the new logo and the launch of these, high-profile tours, and struggled a bit. Press is a dwindling force, right? And I think that I don't know how much investment it justifies, but if it's data you want around how many app downloads we've got and how many tours are available and how many destinations, that sort of thing, that's easily available and can be provided. If you want quotes from me or some other member of the team, happy to provide it. In terms of like a pre-written thing, I think very hard to imagine exactly what it would be that you would require, depending on what you're putting together.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on. Let's see. Heidi, access across tours. Any favorite storytelling approaches, tour structures, creative elements you become excited about and proud of over time that you guys have for publishers?
Yeah, I mean, it's this weird, doing a tour for me is this weird experience of things that bug me that I still haven't been able to fix, and then an incredible sense of achievement sometimes in forgetting that somehow I was there at the beginning of this whole thing, and just being a user, and then realizing, oh, actually, I played a part in this, and here we are. But then something will go wrong, and I'll think of my long list of to-dos, and I think one of the things I realized that I didn't in the beginning is that I'm not the typical user, and the tours that many people enjoy are not necessarily the tours I enjoy. I really kind of, because of my background as a writer, I love somebody who can really kind of sketch a good story, right? Who can find the heart of the subject and give you just enough texture, but not too much. And who is able to insert themselves into it and make it personal and help you kind of see something through their eyes. If people do that, I get very excited. But some of the people who do a lot of our tours complain that there's just, that wastes time that would otherwise be best used in sharing more facts, sharing more information. They want as much information as possible. So it's hard to be too prescriptive, but I mean, I really think that as information itself becomes easily accessible, you're really best off, sharing tours that reflect you as a person in the strongly as doesn't kind of make it the you show, but and kind of make it all about you, but really kind of gives a person a feeling of an authentic storyteller taking them around. And it's a decent answer to the question.
And that leads into into a question regarding Tom's seminar about the importance of well-produced tours that Tom obviously discussed during his seminar. Do they do better?
I think I'm not sure. Gary, do you have a view on this? Because Gary is much closer to the kind of quality of the production of the tours than I am, perhaps.
I mean, do you mean do better financially in terms of sales, or?
I think yes, but of course, you don't know how well the tour is produced until you hear it. So I guess the preview is also a really important opportunity to let people know how high quality your tour would be.
I mean, I think any opportunity to make your tour better, whether that's through, interview audio or sound effects, music, more interesting route choice, AI character voices, I think it's all worth exploring, and it makes the tour better. Whether that's going to appeal to everyone, that's, it's very subjective, but I think it's worth putting in the effort.
So maybe one way of asking it is on the well-produced tours, does that publisher tend to get more repeat visitors on their other tours?
Maybe I'll defer to Iain on that one.
I mean, we don't have a kind of a metric that says, well, this tour is better produced than that one, and then we can tie that financially. So it's guesswork. I don't think it's necessarily true that tours with the higher production values, with somebody going into a studio or a big investment in sound effects and music, I think that doesn't necessarily mean the tour does better. Strong reviews will help a tour do better over time, and those reviews will come through for a variety of reasons, because and can be sort of, maybe it's a place where there's just not that much choice available, and it doesn't need to be something that wows with its production to provide real value to a person, because it's just a simple tour by some of the best tours are not by people who have a lot of media training or experience. They're by people who are really passionate about their neighborhood or their little corner of the world, and they just want to share it. Right? They created the tour because they wanted to tell people about this place that they love, and those are, those tours don't have to be excellent to be really enjoyable.
Good. Okay, let's move on. From Kit, do you have a view on character-led tours?
I think any concept tour it can work really well, but you need to pull it off, and
That was character, not concept. I don't know if I misspoke.
Well, no. So character for me is a
Okay.
concept-driven tour, much like a fictional tour or a thematic tour. You just are biting off a little bit more, and it's going to be more challenging. But if you can pull it off, I think it can be a better tour.
I think, Dan, Iain, let's call it there. We've been online for an hour and a half, and I know, looking at the publishers who are here, we can probably spend another hour and a half chatting, because we have some of our die-hard dedicated publishers here. So just on that note, I want to say thank you very much, everyone, for joining. This is actually my favorite part of any webinar, is the discussion questions with the publishers.
I thought you were going to say the end of it.
No, my favorite part is getting to hear your questions and seeing where we can also follow up, and also seeing your faces, as Gary just said. I want to say thank you so much for Dan. We've really enjoyed having a publisher ask the questions rather than just myself and Iain sitting here chatting to each other like we're on a podcast. We realized that we didn't get to answer all of them, but we'll go through them ourselves and see if there are any other follow-ups that we can do. And then thank you so much to Iain as well. It's always great to have you talk to publishers. We really enjoy that.